or maybe we should do like an introduction. So, hello, welcome. This is an interview with Cameron, who is our spotlight speaker at Commencement 2021. And we're going to be conducting an interview for the Cowell newsletter today. So my first question is, would you please introduce yourself, and how you did before was fine. So like whatever you want to share, go ahead.
Yeah, so my name is Cameron Vanderscoff. I am a UCSC alum. I was there from 2007 to 2011, and I lived in Santa Cruz for 2 years after graduating. So I was there 6 years altogether. I'm originally from California, from the Bay Area. What else can I say? At Santa Cruz, I studied literature with a focus in creative writing and history. I doubled in those. In my time at Cowell College, as I said, I lived in different capacities at Morrison House, at Prescott, and at Adams. I was an RA in the latter two places. I was also the Page Smith Library lead, which is, I don't know if that job even still exists. Does it? Yeah, that's kind of a no. Yeah, it seemed tenuous, but I did it for 4 years, and so it like just sort of keeping the library in order. And I had a little cubicle in the library where I did my work. What else can I say? I mean, I am now an oral historian. I run my own oral history practice, Vanderscoff Oral History, and I'm the founder and the principal of that. And I work with all sorts of people around life history work, around the stories of people and of places and of moments in time, putting together books, web materials, audiovisual materials, but it's all grounded in trying to better understand and amplify people's lived experiences. And that work started in Santa Cruz right after I graduated, like a few months, like October after I graduated in 11. I started doing that work in Santa Cruz. So there's a little bit of an overview.
Yeah, excellent. I mean, I think you're reading our minds, because our next question was actually, would you please describe your work as an oral historian and how you found that path as a career? So yeah, if you want to like get deeper into the story of how it started in Santa Cruz, I'm super interested. And then like how it led you to where you're at now.
Yeah. So how I became an oral historian and how that got linked in Santa Cruz. I didn't know what oral history was, and I didn't know that being an oral historian could be a career. And most of the time, like, people are surprised when I explain to them that it actually is a career, and I'm like not living off a trust fund, and it's like it's not a hobby. So, you know, one of my first introductions to the concept of oral history, or the concept of studying memory, because that's what oral history is really about, right? So, okay, I can take a step back. So like, we all like take history classes in high school, but I really think that those classes are often make a really serious mistake, because they assume the most important thing in history is dates and facts. But to me, the most important thing in history its experience. It's narrative. It's what people actually believe to be true, rather than what necessarily is true. I mean, like, look at our last year with COVID-19 and how different like people's interpretations were of it, both nationwide and within our local communities. And so when we talk about memory, we're talking about why things actually happen. Like, history is the history of perception, which sometimes can be beautiful, because like human beings can perceive these extraordinarily improbable, beautiful, possible things. And I think like that's how, and there can be a lot of courage with that. And I think that's how you get things like the civil rights movement or something like that. You know, it's because people can imagine a certain thing to be possible, and that is worth fighting for. But on the negative side, it means that there's also a lot of confusion, and people do a lot of things out of misapprehension and out of fear. And so when we deal with memory, we're dealing with all of that. So it's like a usable history. It's not academic. It's not like, oh, you need to know the Constitution was this year because that's what the AP history test requires. Like in high school, this is a usable past that matters now. So I got introduced to that concept of memory in spring quarter of freshman year in Alan Christie and Alice Yang's class, which is when I first met Alan, and we've been tied ever since. And so then I thought it was interesting. I still didn't know what oral history was. When I graduated with a humanities degree, like the classic, like, what are you going to do with this? This is not practical. In capitalism, this doesn't make sense, all of that. And the following fall, I was unemployed, and I did an oral history on a volunteer basis. The then provost of Cowell, Faye Crosby, asked me to do that. And she asked me to interview John DeZikas, who was a lovely, really warm-hearted man. Who the DeZikas art cases are named after him in Cowell, and he's around in different ways. He passed away a couple years ago now. But I had won the DeZikas Writing Prize, which may not still be offered. I don't know. So I got asked to interview him, and I loved it. I learned so much from John. Founding faculty, connected me to the whole history of UCSC. And I submitted it to the Regional History Project at the library. Many people don't know that we have a great oral history program at UCSC, which has been run by Irene Reddy for many years. She's stepping down this July, but it's going to continue in some form. She's retiring. And she said, you seem like you aren't bad at this, like you're good at this. Are you interested in paid work in the future? So I did a volunteer that became the seed of a portfolio. And then that portfolio grew into a career gradually over time. So oral history was both very intentional in that it combined all of my interests, but also very unexpected.
Yeah, that's an incredible story. It's always interesting to see one path leads to the other. And yeah, I guess if you are content with how much you shared about your position as an oral historian, or your position now, if you want to get more into sort of what you're doing now, I guess, as opposed to how you started.
Yeah, I mean, so I moved to New York after 2 years because at that time there was only one master's program or graduate program period specifically in oral history in the United States. And the only one, or one of very few in the world. And so I moved to New York, and I went to Columbia University, where I got my master's. And my thinking in moving out here was I'd been in California my whole life, and I wanted to see if I could set up a practice here full time, right? And it was quite a different scenario than, when I lived in Santa Cruz, I was living in a crowded house on Western. 10 people lived in the house. I had 2 roommates who lived in the garage, that whole thing, which students still know very well. And so I was just doing the work kind of on the side. And then in New York, I said, I want to make this a career. So now I'm working on a couple different books right now. One of these books is with my co-author, Jean Rice. It's Jean, and Rice like the food. And Jean Rice is a longtime homeless social justice and civil rights activist here in New York City. And we are co-writing his life story. So he's giving it to me through interviews, and we are trying to tell a story about his efforts, his anti-racist work, his anti kind of poor bias work. He's encountered a lot of that as a Black homeless man who now, as of the last year, is housed. He's 81. And And Gene, we think, has a real message for the country about how to survive. And he's learned so much from his life, from all parts of his life. He was incarcerated in Attica prison in New York State. He was involved in the underground economy for many years, primarily making his money in drug trafficking. And then he became an activist. And this book is going to be about all of that, and about like a multi-generational Black family experience as well in America. So that's one book I'm working on. Another one is I'm working with the university in Okinawa, Japan, where I do a lot of work with Alan, with the Okinawa Memories Initiative, but this is different. And I'm working on a book which is going to be a story of this path-breaking science and technology university, which is very much like UCSC. It's also on a hillside overlooking the ocean. It's also built on a site historically associated with limestone. Even down to that, it's based on rethinking education, a degree of radicalism that's comparable to how UCSC was founded. Town gown, there's just a ton of things. So before COVID, I traveled around the world and did all this, and now I do it all via Zoom. But hopefully we'll be moving again soon. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, absolutely. Hopefully you get traveling again soon. Sounds like incredible work. Both of the books you're working on.
Yeah, we do want to travel. Me and Gene want to go south. He was born in Jim Crow South, so we want to go back to his birthplace for the first time in a million years. We'll see. Yeah, we hope that book will be big. We'll see.
Yeah, hopefully soon. And yeah, so I guess now we're kind of like pivoting away from your work life and I guess like providing more of like a personal like history of your life, your memories. And our next question is, do you have a particularly fond memory of Cowell from your time here that you remember?
Oh yeah, like a million. Pick one out. I mean, one interesting memory, I was the student commencement speaker my year, 10 years ago. So I remember that. I remember getting up on the stage at the East Field House and just feeling this sense of culmination. Because me, like I think many other people, like I really struggled to adjust to college at first, like when I first showed up, and I thought quite seriously about like transferring out, wondering if this was right for me. And I stayed because of a series of people, one of whom was definitely Alan, like who's like got me interested in memory, right? And I also took a great class on Egyptian hieroglyphics, which really I just thought was so cool. So for me, giving that student address was like this fabulous moment, which kind of pulled together so many of my communities. And there was just like a lot of love in the air, you know? I mean, like our particular challenge at our point was we came to school in 2007, which was, and then like we came and then right then the recession happened, right? So that was like our framework. And then like what y'all are going through is far worse, and it's COVID. But we did have a sense that like, okay, like here we are. But a million stories of Cowell. I remember coming back to my dorm room in Adams late one night after a party in Bonnie Doon, and the sun was coming up. And from Adams, if you look out, there's this redwood tree, and like that has like down towards the ocean over by the library. And I remember just deciding I would just stay up and just looking at the sunrise kind of from my window through this redwood tree, and each branch striating a different color. And just having that moment that I think many people have on the campus where you're just like, what a beautiful place, and what like a really special place to learn, to have fun, to make friends, you know, to go to parties, to go to classes, like all of these different things. So those are two different moments.
Incredible memories. And yeah, I love standing at the very top of like the Adams staircase, like looking out there. If only I
Yeah,
had a room overlooking that. Oh, sounds perfect.
yeah,
Um,
yeah, it
and
was
yeah, you
nice.
touched on like your commencement day, I guess. Um, is there anything like you would want people to like try to remember about like their commencement day? Like, what are some like thoughts maybe that should be like going through our minds as we're sort of like closing this chapter of our lives?
Well, like the theme, I guess this is getting into some of the themes of my speech, which I still need to finish writing. So all of this is like now as then, like I do this like the assignment at like a little late in the process, but I do it, which is also a good skill to have in running your own business. I can also have that ability. So as far as like a message to the grads, some of the themes that I'm going to talk about are kind of like a critical listening community. And I'm not sure yet whether that's going to be one phrase or whether that's going to be three different words. But the thing is that like my experience at Santa Cruz did change my life, but not at the time. Or I wasn't conscious of it doing that at the time. Like, it's something that's deepened over the years as I've maintained relationships with my friends from Cowell and from throughout UCSC, who I was really tight with, and like, obviously I've stayed in touch with Alan, I've stayed in touch with Alice Yang and a bunch of different other professors as well. And my friend put it really well the other day. She said that, I kind of feel like having our friends is like this extraordinary brain trust. Like we've known each other for all this time. We've seen each other go through like all kinds of shit. And like we knew each other like when we were like 21, and now we know each other when we're coming into our 30s. And like those are different places to be, and it's nice to have that continuity. So for me, the meaning of Santa Cruz has deepened like over the years. And so I guess like a message to grads, like what community do you want to keep? Because once you're out of college, like that requires intentionality. You're not going to be like sharing classes. You're going to be working in different fields. And you all have already had to deal with such challenges in that regard because of COVID, right? And everyone getting sort of scattered and having to be remote. And so COVID has been such a hard time for so many people in so many different ways, from death to, psychological tolls to just struggling to adjust, the one thing about COVID is that like there is a relationship in history, I think, between crisis and creativity. And that doesn't mean that it makes the crisis okay, but it does, because you can't. Because I think COVID has just been too awful to like, vindicate it in that way. But this creativity can come out of it, right? It need not be only negative things that come out of it, and that's really like such an important question in history. So I guess I would ask like the grads, and I will ask the grads because I offered this gig. Like, what do you want to create? Like, because for example, like most of your classes at UCSC, you might remember them vaguely, but like, there are classes that I took that I don't think about very often. Like someone the other day started talking about detective novels, and it reminded me that I took this class called Detective Fiction with John Jordan, longtime professor in the literature department, who's now retired. And I was like, oh yeah, detective fiction. And like so those things will come to you, but that's not the important thing. Like, what is college teaching you to do? it's teaching you how to create things. It's how to create knowledge, how to create community. And you've been in a time where all of that has been up in the air because of these historical circumstances, which have been totally dislocating. And so, like, yeah, I guess that's my message. I'll develop it more by the time the speech airs.
Awesome. Yeah, I'll try not to spoil it too much for myself as well by asking any more prying questions. I'm really looking forward to hearing it.